Time for the top 25.
It's a trap!
Hey, good morning, Internet. It's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right. It's me, Uncle Lou, and I'm live for you on YouTube today. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it also, and in addition to that as well. Hey, subscribe to this channel if you're not already. Did you know I post college football videos almost every single day of the year? It's true. Some of them are even watchable. Coming up today, I'm going to give you my top 25. I do this a little different than a lot of other people do it. I'm going to put my top 10 up on the screen first and sort of explain why I have the teams ranked where I do. And then for 11 through 25 at the end of the video, I just put that up on the screen. The video would be 3 days long if I explained the entire top 25. But the two biggest complaints I hear about polls in general, the AP, the coaches, whatever, no explanation for why teams are ranked where they are, why a certain team is ahead of another team, whatever. I try to provide that for the top 10. The other complaint I hear all the time, teams aren't punished enough for losses or bad wins, and they're not rewarded enough for good wins. So I'm not afraid to move teams up and down in my poll based on how they perform from week to week. Let's get started right now with today's video. All right, like usual, I'm going to put last week's top 10 up on the screen first. That'll give you an idea of where I was starting at today when I sat down to try to come up with this top 10. Clearly, you can see some teams in there lost this past week, so there's going to be some shuffling up and down. How much? We'll see. All right, let's get going with this week's top 10. All right, coming in at number 10. Last week, of course, I had LSU in this spot. They toted another giant L. Is LSU the worst defending national champion of all time? Probably not, but they're one of the worst for sure. They're out of my top 10. In at number 10, another team that lost this past weekend, Miami. I've got Miami at number 10. I know they got road graded by Clemson. The game wasn't even really close. I had them at 7 last week, so I'm dropping them to 3 spots to number 10. They got to play Pitt at home this week. Let's see if Miami can rebound. Miami teams of the past, the recent past, have let losses cost them other games. They had a hard time recovering from losses. We'll see what happens this week. Let me point out, too, because I forgot to do it at the beginning, and it's going to come up. I'm not putting the Big Ten or the Pac-12 back in my top 10 or top 25 until they start playing. And people keep saying, well, you put the SEC in, and they started late. That's true. I had the Big Ten in my polls up until the point they canceled the season, and the Pac-12, and that took them out. I know they're starting back to Big Ten in 2 weeks, to Pac-12 in 3 or 4 weeks. I'll put them in back in when they start playing. I'm not doing the put them in, take them out, put them in, take them out. The SEC didn't cancel their season. I'm not punishing the Big Ten or the Pac-12. If Ohio State were ranked, they'd be a top 5 team. And I'm sure when I do start ranking them in 2 weeks, they'll be in the top 5. So it's not a punishment. I'm not putting them in and out. I'm not playing that game. So they'll be coming up in the poll here in a couple weeks. But I got Miami at 10. The loss to Clemson, they take on Pitt coming up this week at home. We'll see, like I mentioned, can they get over that loss to the Tater and get a win against the Panther? We'll find out. At number 9, another team that toted a giant L this past weekend, Florida. What are you doing? Lost to Texas A&M 41-38. One of the more exciting games of the weekend. Florida comes up on the short end of the stick, though, and they have to host LSU at home this weekend. I had Florida really high in last week's poll. I had them at 4. So they fall from 4 to 9 here. I don't think this is a good loss to Texas A&M. I don't think Texas A&M is a great team. They tend to lose to every ranked team they play. This is A&M's first win over a top 10 team, I think, since Johnny Manziel back in 2012 or 2013. They seem to be the same team every year, except when they play Florida. When they came out on top, Kellen Mond had the one good game a year that you can count on Kellen Mond having. I expect Kellen Mond to go back to the inconsistent, mediocre mess that we're accustomed to going forward. But Florida did catch an L. Their defense finally caught up with them. Hard to understand how Florida's defense got this bad this quick. Their offense looks pretty good with Kyle Trask throwing the ball around to Pitts and Grimes and Tony and Copeland and those guys. The running game, not great. Offensive line, not great, but they're putting up a ton of points with that passing game. But the defense just really let them down here. And you kind of saw this coming with Florida. Their defense just was really, really bad. And you kind of figured if they ever went up against a team who could match them score for score, that defense would have a hard time holding up. They go on the road to Texas A&M. They catch the loss. I keep them in the top 10, though, at number 9. Number 8, I have Texas A&M. If you look at the AP and the coaches poll that came out yesterday, they have Texas A&M one spot behind Florida. It's completely ridiculous. They have the same record. These are two teams with the exact same record that just played 2 days ago. You can't have Texas A&M behind Florida. You can't. It's one thing if you lose to a 4 or 5 loss team, some huge upset or something, and you're sitting there with one loss. Clearly, you can't move a 5 loss team way up or the 1 loss team way down. But these are two teams that now have an identical record. It's not like A&M's loss was a bad loss. They lost to Alabama. A lot of people are going to lose to Alabama. I don't understand the other polls having these two teams so close, but Florida's still ahead of them. So I moved Texas A&M up to 8 with the win at home against Florida. They travel and take on Bigfoot and Mississippi State this coming up weekend. Coming in at number 7, I have Oklahoma State. They're the last remaining undefeated team in the Big 12. Do I think they will stay that way for long? No, I think the Big 12 is going to eat itself up this year. It looks to me like the Big 12 probably not going to have a playoff team this year. Texas and Oklahoma pretty much both have played themselves out of the playoffs. Oklahoma State, the last true contender there, and they just have a history of losing some boneheaded games. I do think Oklahoma State's a pretty talented team. In fact, this offseason, I picked them as one of my surprise teams in college football. Not a surprise, though, as far as making the playoffs. I did think they could compete for the Big 12, and so far, that's holding true. They were on a bye this past week. Coming up on Saturday, they play at Baylor. I've got Oklahoma State at number 7. Number 6, Cincinnati. Let's give some love for the group of 5. They ain't making a playoff. I mean, I don't know if there's any Cincinnati fans around who are thinking, oh my God, they're close to the top 4. They're not getting into the top 4. They're just not completely their fault. They don't really have an opportunity this year to play any big non-con games, right? All these conferences decided to play basically conference-only schedules. So Cincinnati doesn't even really have an opportunity to prove itself against a top Power 5 team. They're not a one-hit wonder, though. That's another reason I have them so high. Cincinnati has been really good for the last 2 or 3 years now, ever since they got head coach Luke Fickell in from Ohio State. This guy knows what he's doing, and he's not going to be at Cincinnati long. Somebody better go get this guy from Cincinnati, this Luke Fickell. Somebody is going to go get him. I hope it's nobody in the SEC. I really think Luke Fickell's an amazing head coach. Just look what he's doing at Cincinnati. But they also were on a bye this past week. Coming up on Saturday, they play on the road at Tulsa. Probably going to continue that streak and win that one too. Now it's time for the top 5. I've got North Carolina coming in at top 5. In number 5. I had them 8 last week. They got a win over Virginia Tech. I moved them up to 5. That was a pretty good win. I think Virginia Tech's a pretty good team. They were undefeated. It was a shootout type game. North Carolina came out on top 56-45. Some of them moving up was a product of teams ahead of them losing. Some of them moving up was a product of them beating what I think is an okay team in Virginia Tech. Again, that was Virginia Tech's first loss. I've got North Carolina at number 5. This week, they travel to Tallahassee to take on Florida State. They're in a complete tailspin there. Check Florida State's schedule. They beat Jacksonville State 2 weekends ago. That's probably going to be their only win. They are historically bad. Time for the top 4. I've got Notre Dame coming in at number 4. They beat Florida State this past weekend, 42-26. They take on Louisville next weekend. Notre Dame is a polarizing team. I don't like Notre Dame either. Nobody really likes Notre Dame unless you're a Notre Dame fan. But they're a legitimately good team. They could be a playoff team this year if they somehow manage to get past Clemson. You got to remember, Notre Dame is fully in the ACC this year. So they've got to run through their regular season schedule with the first or second best record in the ACC. And then they will find themselves in the ACC title game, most likely against Clemson. They play Clemson in the regular season. We'll see. I believe it's in Notre Dame, too. We'll see what happens. Clemson will be a favorite, I'm sure. Can Notre Dame beat them? Keep it close, whatever. They'll probably get a rematch a few weeks later in the ACC title game, so they're going to get 2 cracks at them. I do think Notre Dame's a pretty good team. Obviously, getting past Clemson, no easy task. We'll see if they can do it, but I've got them number 4 this week. Number 3, UGA. Had them 3 last week. They didn't do anything this weekend to change my mind. Close in the first half against Tennessee due to a boneheaded snap by Georgia, which resulted in a defensive touchdown for Tennessee on the second play of the game. Put them up 7-0. Tennessee hit a couple of sort of long passes there for a couple of touchdowns in the first half, and it was actually tied, I think 21-21 at halftime, something like that. Georgia went on to absolutely destroy them in the second half, winning 44-21 at home. And of course, Georgia this week plays on the road at Bama, one of, if not the biggest games of the regular season all season long. This is a game that people have been talking about since last January, literally the minute the national championship game ended. People started looking forward to this Georgia-Alabama game. It'll be a good one. Georgia's an underdog. I think it's at 4.5 points right now. I think that's probably fair. Georgia should be an underdog. They've struggled against the SEC West teams when they have to play them on the road. Under Kirby Smart, Kirby's 1-3. Yeah, 1-3 on the road against the SEC West. Lost his first 3 on the road to Ole Miss, Auburn, and LSU. 1 on the road last year against Auburn. So 1-3 on the road against the SEC West. Looking to make it 2-3, but it's not going to be easy on the road at Alabama. Alabama's beat Georgia the last, 4 or 5 games in a row. Going back to 2007 was Georgia's last win against Alabama. That was actually in Tuscaloosa. In fact, Alabama, this is kind of a weird stat, but Alabama hasn't beat Georgia in Tuscaloosa since 1994. Now, they don't play every year. They're on the rotating schedule thing. But it's been a while since Alabama beat Georgia in Tuscaloosa. They'll get a chance this weekend. The Dogs travel, play at Alabama, 8 o'clock Saturday night, obviously the game of the week. Number 2, I've got Bama. They did struggle on defense. There's no getting around it. There's no way to sugarcoat it. There's no excuses you can make. They looked really bad on defense. And I was one of the ones this offseason that said last year's Alabama defense was a mirage. They're going to be way better this year. They're going to look like you're used to seeing a Nick Saban defense look this year. It appears so far I might have been wrong. A&M put some points up on them. Now we see what Ole Miss did to them. They did win 63-48. Now, no one doubts Alabama's offense. They've got an amazing offense, but their defense is not what it used to be. Alabama is sort of the opposite of Georgia, right? Georgia's got probably the best defense in America. Their offense seems to be sort of just good enough to get by most times, right? It's not explosive. It's not exciting. We don't have the Heisman candidate QBs, anything like that, but Georgia's offense sort of just plods along, scores enough points, lets that defense win them most of the games. Can they do that against a team like Alabama? We'll have all week to talk about that. Georgia's going to have to score some points to win that game. Bama's going to have to play defense to win that game. Bama's defense is going to have to play better than they've been playing. Georgia's offense is going to have to play better than it's been playing. Whichever one of those two units, Alabama's defense or Georgia's offense, plays closer to its potential versus what it's been playing like so far this season, I think we'll win that game. Should be a good one. That's this Saturday. And of course, number 1, I've got Clemson. They destroyed Miami 42-17. Everybody had them in the top 10 last week. Some people had them as high as 5, 6, or 7. The game was not a game. This was a mismatch. Clemson dominated Miami in every asset of the game. Or the ground game, the running game, the passing game, the ground game. Defensively, they shut Miami down. Derek King completed less than 50% of his passes. Trevor Lawrence had another almost perfect game. Clemson appears to me to be the best team right now. We hadn't got to look at Ohio State yet. Clemson is a complete team. They've got an amazing defense and an amazing offense. Bama's got a great offense, but some questions about the defense. Georgia's got a great defense, but some questions about the offense. We'll see what Ohio State looks like in a couple of weeks. I think Clemson, Bama, and UGA should be everybody's top 3. If anybody wants to argue over the order, okay. But I think that should be the top 3. And if you've got anyone else in the top 3, I think that's a little silly right now. Clemson looks like the best team. Alabama is Alabama. And Georgia, so far this season, has the most impressive resume of any team. There's not a team in the top 10 that has played a tougher schedule than Georgia. There's not. You can laugh at Auburn if you want to. You can laugh at Tennessee if you want to. Both of those teams were and are undefeated except for their loss to Georgia. Tennessee was top 10 when we played them. They're still top 15. Tennessee was top 15 when we played them. They're still top 20. So that's 2 wins over ranked teams. No one else has that. Not to that caliber. Anyway, I'm not saying that means Georgia's the best team. I'm just saying they clearly deserve to be ranked 3rd. The eye test tells you they're a good team. The scoreboard tells you they're a good team. And the strength of schedule tells you they're a good team. They're the only Power 5 team in America who has won all 3 games that they've played by a minimum of 21 points or more. People are knocking on Georgia's offense, and I get it. Believe me, I'm in the front of the line. I'm not happy with Georgia's offense, it seems like, ever. But how many points are they averaging a game? 37 against Arkansas, 27 against Auburn, and now 44 against Tennessee. That's about 36, 37 points a game. Georgia's going to win a lot of games. And by a lot, I mean all of them or almost all of them if they're scoring 37 points a game. Last year, Georgia averaged 19 points per game against SEC competition. That's not good. That's nowhere near good enough. 37 points per game with the defense that Georgia has is good enough. We'll see if they can get it together this week when they play Alabama. Everyone will be watching. I'll be streaming that game on the Patreon page. We'll start around 7:30. There's a link in the description of this video if you want to sign up on the Patreon page and help support the channel. All right, that's it. That's the top 10. Be sure and let me know where you disagree, where you think I'm wrong, what changes need to be made. Don't just tell me Cincinnati shouldn't be 6. Tell me who should be 6. And if you're going to take somebody out of my top 10, tell me who you're going to put in yours. Let me know. I'll list 11 through 25 up on the screen right now. And have a good morning, too.